Okay, getting ready. We still got about 2 minutes before we start, and hopefully people are joining us from LinkedIn and YouTube, maybe Twitter. It looks like we're live on Twitter too. Although I've never figured out whether we are on there. So if you do have any comments, want to join us on StreamYard, let me know. I'll put it in the comments. If you want to uh, just ask a question. LinkedIn, I see all of your comments. It's coming across. It does actually StreamYard had a problem with that, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, but I guess they've got that fixed. So if you're joining us on LinkedIn, give us a hello. Let us know that you're there and listening in. If you are joining us from YouTube, please do the same. And if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. So we'll give it about a minute for people to start joining. And hey, Russell, there we are. Hey. Good to see you there, sir. And so, if you didn't hear Russell and I talking last week, go ahead and check that out. It was kind of an interesting stream. Starts choppy. I watched like a few minutes of it as I was running off of the rental car shuttle to try to get some bars. But it starts choppy. But once Russell gets on, it evens out a little bit, and we have a good conversation. So. That was a lot of fun last week, Russell. So good to see you there and good to see you back. So if you, Russell's joining us on YouTube, if you're joining us on LinkedIn, please say hello as well. And I'm just going to sit here and talk. If you have questions, you have comments, you want to chime in about something that's going on in the week, please do. I'll talk about the different things that I did. Looks like we have Brandon joining us. Hey, Brandon, how you doing, sir?
Doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. It's noon Eastern time. It's actually a different time here where I'm at. I'm at an undisclosed location. And for everybody joining us, this is the Cutaway Security ICS Friday Infosec chat. Just a quick 30-minute get together to just kind of check in with people, see what people are working on, see if people have any questions about what's going on. I do talk about cutaway security, and let's look at the agenda. So we do have try to come up with an agenda each week. So first, the cutaway security activities. Obviously, I'm on site. I'm at an undisclosed location, working for utility and doing a security assessment / penetration test for an OSI soft Pi implementation. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's the Pi implementation is a data historian, so it's getting information from the different areas within the process. It's collecting that into databases and sharing that out to other applications and other users. And the implementation of that is pretty important. The security of that for various reasons. The data that's coming in, getting a live stream, and that's feeding into other processes and into other analytical servers. And what's really important about that is the data changes, and so getting the tag references and information, understanding that. But what I've learned this week is that the level 3 authentication and authorization has been the focus. So Active Directory, the implementation of the users and within the Active Directory environment for the location that it's deployed has been a concern. Fortunately, we're in a testing environment, and it's pretty secure. The live and production environment is actually a NERC environment, so it's locked down even more. But so hopefully we're adding value. I've already identified a few things that can be strengthened, but at the same time, it's these types of pen tests are a challenge. They, actually understanding the implementation of the Active Directory and the relationships between all of the accounts, the service accounts, and in some of the cases, the how the Pi actually uses those internally for authentication, because there is kind of a widget in the middle that Pi uses to provide those authentications. And I'm pretty sure it's for the portions that don't have direct access to Active Directory, but I'm not totally sure on the thought process around the history. So have you ever dealt with Pi, Brandon?
Not usually see it a little bit with the because my background is on the network security monitoring side,
Hmm.
where the Pi stuff generally is you don't get as much really good asset inventory stuff from those protocols when you monitor them on the network, because it is more of a Windows type thing rather than like Ethernet IP or something like that, where you get a lot of OT asset inventory stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, so obviously, I've seen it in environments, but it's not something I've spent a lot of time on. But your discussion made me want to ask a couple things of you. Like one of them was you mentioned being at a NERC SIP utility. I've been blue team my whole life, and so when you do a pen test on a like a NERC SIP utility versus a manufacturer or something like that, does your methodology change when you go to different industries, or do you have kind of the same methodology, or how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. And I just saw that Wes joined us. And hey, Wes, how you doing? If anybody else is joining us, please say hello and ask any questions. But Brandon, absolutely. Here, let me go back to this. So uh, the challenges for these types of environments is that they've got requirements for the consultants that are coming in. It's even though we're in a test environment right now, we could actually do this, and there's a requirement to do this test when they move this into production. Fortunately, we're doing kind of um, a uh, this is a SAT test. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Factory acceptance testing, site acceptance testing. So this is a site acceptance testing environment right now, and but they're still treating it that way, meaning that uh, we have to. They have jump hosts that we have to go through. We actually are using some of the images that they helped us build. In other words, I had to give a list of tools that I wanted, both from ensuring that they're installed either on a Kali system or on a Windows system, and uh, you know, having the tools that I consistently use for these types of assessments, and which can be a challenge, even though in the Active Directory environment, a lot of times you're just using the Windows tools, but actually getting the RSAT tools on there, so that you have the Active Directory commandlets, so that you can interact with it, with that environment. It's important to do that. I do like to have my own scripts for some of the tools that I have set up for EtterCap, and some of the other tools. I like to have those on there, so it saves time. I just don't have to type them in again. But notice that I said that and kind of getting back to what you were talking about, Brandon, having to go through jump posts. And so right now in this implementation, so we're sitting in a conference room in the data center. And we're using a laptop that they've provided, and then we get authentic, that they have to authenticate us into uh, the first jump host, which provides them access to the second jump host, which has our VMs on it. And we've got extra projectors that are set up so that they're projecting everything, because we've got two people working, and we've got multiple people that are one person monitoring my activities, and the other person that's helping us monitoring his activities while we're going through. And so and this is the requirement for that. It definitely makes it a challenge, especially when we realize that, oh, we forgot to add that tool. We need to test this thing, and we didn't. Now we've got to figure out a way to get that on the inside, and we have a methodology for that, but it takes time. We've got to download it, zip it up, password protect it, so that a lot of times the malware, anti-malware software doesn't alert on it, and then pass it through all of those jump hosts to get it on the inside. So it can be a challenge. You have to be patient. And you have to realize that they're doing this because people have made bad choices in the past, and so we're all kind of suffering because of that. So, Brandon, does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's Great. That I'm interested in kind of that workflow because, like I said, it's not something I've really experienced in terms of actually going out and I mean I've played around in lab environments on my own and stuff, but really that's playing around. That's not doing it for a job. So that's a little bit different than
Mm-hmm.
an actual engagement. So that's really
Yeah,
interesting.
some organizations do it slightly different, but most of them are pretty consistent. You have to use their systems. You can't, like, the laptop. I bring my laptop, and they allow me to connect in. I mean, I I have to bring my Wi-Fi now because a lot of times they don't allow people on the even on the guest Wi-Fi, or even if it's allowed, it's difficult to get permissions to get on that. So I've added that as an operating expense. Sometimes they allow us to build our own VMs and then they place it on the systems, but sometimes their teams have to do it, and it really depends on the organization and the what they've chosen to do. But like I said, it's just a matter of being patient and being consistent, trying to set things up in advance. I've kind of thought about, like, maybe developing some type of jump host test tool, but I mean, in the end, usually they have to build it their own teams have to build it themselves with guidance, with guidance from the testers. So it definitely can be a challenge. Awesome. So yeah, so what else is going on? So one of the interesting things out of this whole thing is that the build versus break, and I'm fortunate to have assistance from kind of an admin this time. So oftentimes I've selected people that have backgrounds in information security, but the control environment isn't, and even in the business environments, it's not all about Infosec and knowing how to break things. It's knowing how to properly deploy systems, operating systems, applications like web servers and database servers, and in this case, the Pi servers. Having somebody that's familiar with that to ask questions and provide background and so forth. And I got a person to assist me with this, and he's doing a great job. We're really hitting it off from a personality and a teamwork perspective, but at the same time, I've noticed kind of the build versus break kind of mentality, because he's used to patching systems, he's used to configuring and deploying them, and when I ask him about, like, okay, so all right, so you authenticated and you did a packet capture. Now go in and evaluate the packet capture and see if it's, see if you can pull out interesting information. And he looks at me like, why would you do that? Why would you, it's working the way we expect it to. And it's not that the curiosity, it's not there. It's just that it hasn't been exposed to that break mentality. It's interesting seeing that dynamic and watching those wheels start to turn. And it reminded me that everybody's got their different perspectives and their different views, and it's all based on their their previous experiences. Have you run into that, Brandon, like working with integrators and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's really, really fun to. That's one of the things I like, is being able to show what's the possibilities of it, because a lot of people, there's kind of this stereotype that OT people don't know security, or aren't able to do security and stuff, and that they choose to build insecure things because they don't know how to do it any better. But one of the things that, I mean, for the most part, these are like professional engineers who've gotten a lot of school and taken some very intensive exams and stuff. They're very smart people. And when we're able to talk to, and a lot of times they care about what they are doing too. Like they're in manufacturing, they're in the electric and industry because they find that electrical engineering interesting, or they find building production lines interesting and stuff like that. That's how they got to where they are. And so when you can talk to somebody who's interested in something and knows a lot about something, and you're interested in what they're interested in and know a lot about something else. Those are really good conversations. That's one of the things I love about when I was a sales engineer, and I would go to all these different companies to do that. That was one of the things I loved about that job, was being able to see and learn and share information from with all those different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, understand, getting that perspective of what they're trying to do, and that's why I enjoy working in these environments, is that there's so much uniqueness in everything, you know, from day to day. You know, I mean, so I'm at a utility right now. Instead of being at the substation like I was before, now I'm at a data center for some of their level 3 implementations. So I get to see those different environments. In a couple weeks, I'll be first I'll be teaching in San Francisco, so meeting new people there. But then I'll be going out to Cleveland, Ohio, to natural gas. Still for a utility, you know, a different utility, but you know, do some natural gas and take a look at that. So that's and in another data center. So more SCADA, more level 3 kind of environments, and actually, yeah, the more site acceptance testing. You know, they're implementing it, and they're well, I guess it's still in the test environment, so maybe it's factory acceptance testing. I guess you could probably look at it like that. But it's yeah, we're getting. I'm seeing the utilities at least push out some of their assessments to occur before it's actually deployed in the field, get those problem solved, issues located and solved before they go out there. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was at a utility one time 5 years ago, maybe now, and we were in a conference room near their data center, but then they had this big room where they built all their substation equipment. They put everything together in their big office room thing, and then put them on pallets and moved them out to the substation. So every substation was basically built one place, and then all the PLs, all the RTUs, all the IEDs, all that kind of stuff that's in the substation, built in their central location, and then just shipped out to wherever they needed to go, and then just kind of bolted back together as a complete thing.
Right.
It was
yeah.
pretty interesting to see that.
Right, and I saw that. I mean, I did an assessment at a utility, and they actually came in to kind of validate some of the firmware on every single one of the devices, and so we had to go through and pull all of that information. And certainly, they wanted to understand some of the risks around implementation, but they considered it a low substation, so the risk rating was low, and you know, they weren't worried about default passwords. And I was just like looking at my point, you know, that my liaison, that, you know, the person that I'm there with, and I'm like, you have this perfect opportunity. All of this equipment is going in brand new, and you have this opportunity. And his response to me was, that requirement doesn't go in for another 4 months. So
yeah,
so the next substation that would be going out, they'd be doing exactly what I was talking about, because it wasn't a corporate requirement, you know, at that time. And you know, my concern, and the concern for a lot of people, is that now that stuff it's not going to be changed for 15 years, really, depending on, unless requirements, you know, make that change. So you know, and once again, if you are joining us on LinkedIn, LinkedIn kind of gave me a warning, so it might be a little sketchy on LinkedIn. Hopefully, everybody that's joining on YouTube is hearing everything correct, or as we're speaking it. I do see that Wes has a question.
I was going to say, yeah, Wes has a question from YouTube, so it sounds like it's working. But another question about your pen testing. So, how do you decide if your focus is authentication with Pi and Active Directory? How do you decide what that focus is going to be? Is that a scoping thing that you do, or is that customer?
Well, so any pen test that you're going in, you should do some type of threat modeling. And if you're not doing it before, and this client actually requires that, they require us to do an architecture review and a threat model. And so we have the advantage of speaking to a few of the administrators and the people that are deploying it. And so we can talk to them and we can decide, through those conversations, the implementation, talking about, what's the most critical assets, and where they're implementing it. What are the, is it going to be a flat subnet? If is everything supposed to be isolated? Understanding the expectations of the deployment. And then from there, once we figure out the threat model, the threat modeling actually comes up with use cases for attack methodology. How would normal users, or somebody with administrative level credentials come after this system? And knowing that, and it's tough because it's in an isolated environment. And I always usually fall back on my normal methodology, which is going from kind of a less interactive information gathering to a more active. So even though I would go after, go after the authentications, testing the authentication mechanisms, I still want to do some captures first, network captures, so that I understand the flow of information, so that what I'm doing there is I'm validating that what they told me is what we're actually seeing on the network, what the actual implementation is. And that information gathering, that network information gathering, we can use to get people to authenticate at the same time. If you're using a web interface, then we'll get that authentication there, and we'll capture that. Is it actually using the application authentication mechanism, or is it leveraging Active Directory? And can we take advantage of some of the implementations that are associated with that Active Directory configuration? From there, then we start getting a little bit more active if we're actually doing a pen test, which means that we're trying to steal credentials and leverage those. After we do those evaluations, so then we'll start moving to some of those pen test activities. But even that starts with an understanding of the Active Directory implementation, which is querying the Active Directory, looking at the different account settings, how they've got those set up, and seeing if we can leverage things like stealing credentials, as I mentioned, or leveraging some of the Kerber roasting attacks, which are all dependent on the configuration. So I started, and that's a long way to get around to. I kind of balance the threat modeling aspect, but also using my consistent grab network data first, start analyzing that network data to identify issues, then start looking at the authentication stuff, and then start doing the interactions with the different applications. So Wes, hopefully that answers your question. If I didn't, just let me know. Brandon, do you think I answered the question?
Yeah, I think my takeaway from that was you talk to the customer about what the scope, but then you also have some things you do every time, no matter what, because you kind of have to respond to what you see, and especially in the reconnaissance side of things, starting with that, so you can verify what the customer told you, and not just take it on faith.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I'm challenged by this assessment. I'm challenged by this assessment because it's a level 3 environment, and it is Active Directory. I haven't dealt with Active Directory much over the past year, and just like anything else, the skills degrade. If I've been doing a lot of architecture review, information gathering, dealing with the level 2 and below environments. And so I'm good at interacting with those lower level protocols, but when it comes to Active Directory, I'm just like, okay, I need to find those, I need to find those online resources that are kind of helping me go through some of the Active Directory stuff, and reminding myself in the evenings, kind of doing some research, some extra research, to be sure I'm ready for the next day. I've got the tools that I need, or I've got the direction that I need. But that's just like anything, right? Any job, we're not expected, we're expected to understand how to move through challenges, but not necessarily expected to be an expert on every single domain. So that's always a challenge for these types of assessments.
Yeah, I'm a part of a mentoring group on a different Slack, and one of the things that we were talking about a couple of days ago was how there's some people who are very new to InfoSec, like IT help desk, who want to get into InfoSec, all the way to people who have done like high level presentations at Black Hat type thing. So it's really interesting. But one of the things that a couple of us were talking about was there's just so much stuff that InfoSec is not a single topic anymore. And so, I mean, when I got involved in 2012, 2013, sometime around there, it wasn't there wasn't a single cybersecurity field anymore. It was, it's too broad. And so you need to find what you like and find if you find something to go deep on, then that's great. But I also know people who are really more jack of all trades who they don't go really deep on anything, but they have very successful careers and a very successful life by being kind of that jack of all trades. Whether that's
it really all boils it boils down to your mentality, how your brain works, and how you like to do things. I'm the jack of all trades kind of guy, but it also means that I'm not focusing on a specific domain, and that can be a challenge, especially working for an organization that wants me to do a very specific thing. I don't mind doing that, but I'm more of the guy, what does the team need at that time? Brandon's got a question for you. We still got about 5 minutes, but I mean, Wes has a question for you, Brandon, which is like, how do you prepare an organization on the OT side for monitoring? So I know you've got some experience with that. So what would be your first couple steps if you were coming into an organization that said, hey, we need to, or we've been given this requirement to monitor, or that we feel that we need to improve that. So what are some of the, the first one or two things that you would help them for that approach?
Well, the first thing I would want to do is figure out why they want to monitor and what they want to monitor. So you can have a very distributed architecture, or you can have this thing where you're basically want to monitor just the entryway into the secure zone or the industrial zone. So what you want to get out of the monitoring really drives what you're going to do. So if I have a company who's wanting to get involved with it, my first thing is I try to find out what that means to them, so that I can tailor what we do to what will make them successful in their endeavors. And so
but so then, I could see a lot of people trying to solve the whole problem at the first iteration of their solution, and that can be overwhelming, right?
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of. I've worked for two different network security monitoring companies, and both of them have used the mantra in customer talks and stuff of walk, crawl, run. And so I'm a big fan of that as well, where maybe pick one site or a handful of sites to start with, and make sure you can you can deploy the tool. You can make sure that you can get the information, that you know who you're working with. Make sure, one of the things that's often overlooked when you go do a new deployment is, how is the information that you get from monitoring, how is that going to be shared with other people within the organization? Are the alerts going to go to a SOC to be investigated, or are they going to be investigated just by an OT security person who has that as part of their job and not their entire job? How are you going to integrate that in? Obviously, the more parts of an organization you can integrate into, the more successful that the project is going to be, because you're providing value across. The more people you can provide value to, the more benefits there are to the project. And so
and when I'm teaching or I'm talking to people about this stuff, I mean, that one of the first things I say is like, hey, okay, yeah, great, you're going to start monitoring. All right, what do you do when you find something? Who's responsible for it? What are your steps? So if you're going to start looking and listen, gathering and reviewing, you better know how to respond. So it's prevention, detection, response, right? And why do the detection if why do that network monitoring? Why tune everything if you're not going to have a logical method for event escalation? Because not everything is an incident, right? So not every alert is requires an incident response, but it can certainly turn into that. And if you're not prepared to answer those questions, if your engineers or senior operators or something like that aren't prepared to be a part of the investigative team and answering questions and gathering information, you better get them in a room and sit down and talk about it, because it's going to be a rude awakening, right?
So that's kind of on the soft skills side of preparing. I think on the other side, there's kind of the technical side of preparing as well. I do want to talk about that a little bit. Obviously, with network monitoring, the critical factor is how are you getting the packets, and so so that means like asking what kind of switches they have. Do they if they don't know what kind of switches they have out in their facilities, maybe it's not going to be, maybe they're not ready for that step yet, or maybe you need to really do the crawl phase and maybe get a site visit or a single assessment rather than a full deployment at a site or something, or maybe a site visit where you just kind of talk to them. I've done that too, where I go out to a site and you just walk the floor and talk to people to find out what's even capable with their locations. And so
understanding that architecture. I mean, that, really, that's the first start, is understanding the architecture. Brandon, Wes, Russell, and everybody else out there, we're at 30 minutes. Don't want to go any longer. I got to get back to work. I know Brandon does too, and I know you do as well. So thank you for spending your lunch with us. The Cutaway Security ICS Friday Infosec chat. It's a horrible name, but we do it every time. Brandon, once again, I appreciate you joining me and having the conversation. Wes, Russell, hopefully there are a few more people out there. If you're on LinkedIn, hopefully there wasn't any issues. But this will be up for recording for later, so please stop in, and we will see everybody next week. So, Brandon, thanks a lot, and I'll see you on the Discord, sir.
Yep, thank you, Don.
All right, bye, everybody.